if somebody decides to go on a diet, they're like, well, I really need to lose a few pounds, but it's not imperative that they do. So people would ask me, I'm like, well, I got a choice. I can either do it or I can die.
Welcome to the Think and Grow Well Show. If you allow your doctor, your insurance, or your Uncle Sam to define healthy, or you blame someone else for the way you feel, or you seek the fountain of youth in a prescription bottle, at a needle tip, or along the scalpel's edge, then be advised. You are about to be offended. You should probably leave now.
Anybody can just think and feel better? That's scary. I mean, thoughts aren't regulated by the feds, and no drug company has a patent on them. So thinking thoughts must not be very safe or effective.
If you love feeling frisky and having fun, take responsibility for your own vitality, and want freedom to enjoy epic experiences with folks you love, welcome aboard and prepare to be blown away. The Think and Grow Well Show starts now. Here's your host, Dr. Lori Barr.
Hey, it's Dr. Lori Barr here. I'm so excited today because we have a very special guest. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew you might perish and there was really no one there who could save where you actually thought that the only person who would really save your life was yourself? That's exactly what happened to my guest, Mr. Dave Vogt. No, he wasn't out hiking in Western Canada and got his arm pinned under a rock and had to saw it off or anything. He was not attacked by a bear and left to die. Actually, what happened to Dave is something that easily could happen to you or I. And you know what? I'm so happy that he is here to share that experience with us. Can you guess what that death threat came from and what he had to do to overcome it to save his own life?
Today's guest.
Dave, I'm so excited that you're here and to have you sharing your experience with us. Welcome to Think and Grow Well.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So my guest today is Mr. Dave Vogt. He's a serial entrepreneur who's crossed many business paths in his career. He cut his teeth in the automotive industry as the owner of Dave's Pit Stop, an auto repair shop in small town Welland, Ontario. This is where he met Stephanie Schaefer in 2003 when Dave helped Steph find a car, and the two of them had been inseparable ever since. By 2004, Dave and Steph took on their first house flipping work. It was crazy hours, right?
It was nuts.
I mean, did you really know what you were getting into?
No, I was working at the shop and doing that at the same time. So.
Oh my goodness, 2 feet in two different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's always interesting. So you learned a lot of new skills, right? And you're having a lot of fun.
Oh, it was amazing.
Deeply in love with your life partner.
Oh, it's amazing.
And there's nothing like that feeling. Now both Dave and Steph have transitioned to full-time realtors in the Niagara region of Ontario. Talk about beautiful.
Yeah.
Ontario, Canada, Niagara Falls. And, they get to work together every day as the Dave and Steph real estate team. And they take their house flipping experience, marketing skills, and investing experience to their clients as two of Niagara's trusted real estate advisors. Now, Dave and I are mastermind partners. And, when we last got together to assist each other, and that's actually what we're doing right now, in scaling our businesses to the next level, he agreed to share some insights about what happened to him that has really assisted him since he had his death threat. So I am going to have Dave tell you about his death threat right now.
Yeah, in 2016, I was diagnosed with lung cancer right around my birthday. It was a wonderful birthday present. Went in and got an x-ray done and found out that I had stage 3 lung cancer.
So what caused you to get the x-ray?
My mom had a stroke probably about 8 months prior to my diagnosis. And shortly after that, I got sick with a chest cold that did not go away. And after about 2 months of fighting it, I finally kicked it. But I still continued to have a wheezing that never went away. And Steph kept bugging me to go to the doctor. And I'm like, I don't like doctors. I don't want to go. And she's like, you need to go get it checked out. So I went and got a chest x-ray done, and that was where we found the tumors in my lower third of my lung on the right side.
All right.
Yeah.
So a mass was found on a chest x-ray.
Yes.
I mean, and that right there, I mean, it's just a life-changing experience. It's almost unbelievable.
It's crazy. Like, I was like, me being who I am, I'm kind of take life by the horns, right? I'm like, I looked at the doc, I'm like, okay, so what do we do about this? And then I looked over at Steph, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is a big deal. I was like, this is going to be a challenge, right? Like, it took a bit to sink in, but when it did, it's like, oh man, right? So
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah. So after you got over the shock and disbelief of being diagnosed with cancer at a young age, at what point did you start to realize that you needed a stronger personal advocate if you were going to thrive as you traveled with your disease?
Well, I'd always been health conscious with everything in my life. In my late or early 30s, actually, I was a very good, very physically active. I was actually in the gym every day. Like, I was probably the front cover of Men's Health Fitness magazine because I was like completely like in good shape, and I felt amazing, right? But 15 years of working, burning the candle at both ends, it just kind of went downwards. But I kept studying and researching stuff then, even for my diet. And even as a young kid, my mom actually put me on a very clean diet to help with my hyperactivity. And diet has always been a big part of my life. So I knew that I needed to do something with my diet immediately. But also I had been researching because of my mom's stroke about cardiovascular disease. I had read the China study, all of these books that said that diet could radically change your health. And so for my mom suffering with a stroke, I was like, we need to just absolutely go out there and kill it, like get rid of the blockages and everything. I could do it with food. So I was already had her on a whole food plant-based diet, and I was kind of transitioning towards that way. So once I got the diagnosis, I was already researching. So I already knew that there was other opportunities out there. And in my research with heart disease came in cancer, and every one of those when it came to health and wellness. So I just absolutely jumped on that bandwagon, knowing full well that there was good ways that we could work with this disease.
So let me get this straight here now. Not only were you dealing with your own illness, but even before that, your family was health conscious.
Yes.
Even from a young age.
Yeah.
And your mother then has this stroke. What were her deficits after her stroke?
We got really fortunate. My mother's a very bright woman. The only thing that she really suffered was some minor mobility issues, and her brightness wasn't there anymore.
Well, it might have been there. She couldn't.
Yeah, it was just really,
Yes, anymore.
she was still communicative and everything. What happened with her, she had a bunch of tiny mini strokes over a course of a couple of days, and that led to her going into the hospital and then figuring out that she had a 75% blockage on her carotid on one side, 100% on the other. So all the blood was going over the top of the back of her head. And I was like, okay, how do we get these unblocked? And reading Dr. Esselstyn's book about heart disease and that made me realize that you can completely reverse heart disease just with a whole food plant-based diet. It was amazing when I read it. I remember reading it, and I remember the study, and I think there was like 30 people that he brought into the study who were basically written off conventional medicine. And he pushed the envelope of what was then the norm for a doctor to do. And he literally was kind of pushed out of, I think it was at Boston University Hospital, he was actually pushed out because he was doing things that they didn't agree with, because it totally went against the grain of the conventional medicine. It's crazy.
So you put her on this whole food, plant-based diet in the process of assisting her.
Yeah.
And moms, if you have a great relationship with your mom, that's such a strong bond. Absolutely. So you already had all this love energy happening in order to assist her with her health challenge. And then along the way, you're also getting information that helps you.
It did, yes.
That's great. There had to be some point where you started to realize that you actually knew more than your medical team that was assisting you, at least around nutrition.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
What did that feel like? What did you...
It was frustrating, actually, because they never ever discussed nutrition. When I first got diagnosed, they told me that I wasn't a candidate for radiation and chemotherapy in the beginning, and that I couldn't do surgery. And not that I would have done either one of them, knowing my knowledge at that point about cancer and the people who have survived cancer. Cancer's been in my family going back. My grandfather had lung cancer. He suffered greatly, going through radiation and chemo. And I remember as, I think, a 12 or 14-year-old kid, him saying, if you get a diagnosis of lung cancer, don't do the radiation and the chemo because it's hell. Like, he spent a year in the hospital. I mean, we've come a long way with technologies. Radiation is much more targeted now. The chemotherapies that they have are so much better. But at the end of the day, they're still very toxic to your system and your body. And There are a few exceptions. I wouldn't tell anybody to say no altogether. It depends very greatly on your situation. Every type of cancer is different. And that's a big part of what I tell people when I'm speaking to them about this, is that yes, diet is exponentially beneficial to your health, whether you're a sufferer of cancer or otherwise. Just in general, lifestyle is eating good is important, but let food be thy medicine is such a big thing. And to watch my mom like go through all of that, and actually she was diabetic. She's no longer diabetic. She lost weight. She feels amazing. Most stroke patients usually stroke out again within a year. She's going on 3 years now, almost 4 years now, completely stroke free.
So obviously you decided to use Dr. Google and it totally worked to your advantage.
Despite them telling me not to.
How did you plug yourself into places? Because there's good information and bad information on the internet. So how did you plug yourself into reliable places that you felt you could trust to then take that information back to your doctor and say, hey, look, I know you want to do this, but look, I've got all this evidence and this is credible evidence. Yeah. How did you do that?
Well, I did read a lot of technical articles, to be honest. I realized that Dr. Google isn't all it's cracked up to be. There's a lot of naysayers on. There's a lot of negative information. And there's a lot of wrong information on there. So you have to consciously decide between what you're reading and kind of interpolate what you're reading to come up with the best advice. If you repeatedly see the same thing being touted on the internet, then there's a possibility that that might be right. And if you have people that have had significant results using specific things, then you might be onto something, right? I remember watching the documentary Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, or whatever it was, with the juicing. Like Steph and I did the juicing in the beginning. And we did the whole food plant-based diet. We did the Gerson diet, so to speak. But those are all things that people were getting significant changes in their body composition, significant differences in their overall health, huge improvements. I know when I watched that movie, I was like, man, that little truck driver, I was like, go buddy, you know, like he was just rocking it out. Like he was doing it. He's like, and that's the problem. People would say to me, how did you cut out sugar and go like whole food plant-based diet? Like, how do you cut all that out? Well, you know, if somebody decides to go on a diet, and they're like, well, I really need to lose a few pounds, but it's not imperative that they do. So people would ask me, I'm like, well, I got a choice. I can either do it or I can die. And they're like, oh, I never thought about it that way. And I'm like, well, if everybody thought about their health that way, because the reality is that if you treat yourself incorrectly over a course of time, you're going to die younger.
Yeah.
You know, and I've studied some really amazing people like Dr. Amin Ra, who eats one vegan meal a day, and he's like a weightlifting, amazing, what an incredible man. Oh my goodness. And he's so zen. When he talks, you're just like, you're just calm, right? Like, he's an amazing individual. I'd love to meet him. But there's a guy who studies everything. He's got 5 doctorates, I think, to do with life longevity. And he's basically come up with this system that he eats one vegan meal a day, which is mind-boggling. And then me coming from a background of weightlifting, weight training, bodybuilding, doing it all natural, you know, I have to eat lots of protein. I have to this, I have to that. There's so many fallacies out there. When you see a real true vegan weight training athlete and you look at their body composition, you're like, how is it possible that that person is so fit and so jacked, incredibly in shape and so much muscle mass? Everybody has their own concept of what works, what doesn't work. So you have to be your own advocate. You have to go figure out what works for you, because not everybody's body is the same. So what you put in is not always what you're going to get out. But you have to be careful with what you put in.
Let's emphasize, everybody's body is completely different.
Yes.
Because it is subject to your own genetics. It is subject to your own environment over time. Yeah. And it is subject to your attitude, your mental, your spiritual, everything.
Yeah.
You know, you talked about the fact that you're the happiest person when you walk into a pathology center. That serves you well.
Oh, it does.
It really serves the people who...
Oh, it's crazy. I brighten up people's days. I'm in there, I'm big smile. Like, how you doing today? And they're, you know, I'm going in for chemo. I'm like, oh, that sucks. Home. Have a smile on your face while you're doing it, because you know it's going to suck. It's going to suck now. It's going to suck after. But hey, you know what? You're going to get through it. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's weird. And even nurses in the oncology department, they see me come in. They know me by name now. The one doctor I had put me on the wrong drug to start out with. Didn't cross the blood-brain barrier. And by then I had already had cancer transition to my brain. So I was the one that actually told my doctors the drug that I wanted to be on. So I ended up switching oncologists halfway in between this. Right when I found out that he put me on the wrong drug, I went in to talk to him. He had semi-retired, so I had to go talk to a new oncologist, which was like, I was angry. Put me on another drug and lots of issues with. There's so many side effects with most of these drugs, which is the other thing. So if you're eating healthy and clean and taking care of your body, it does help. There's been studies that prove that just fasting 2 days prior to going into your chemotherapeutic treatment will actually increase the efficacy, I think, by 50%, and it will reduce the side effects by 50%. So just knowing that alone, no doctors are going to tell you that. Doctors are starting to realize that there's a connection between the two of these. So one of the ladies that I follow, Nasha Winters, cancer is a metabolic disease, literally went and sat with the people at Sloan Kettering and decided that they wanted her to speak. So she went in and spoke to a group of oncologists about the metabolic treatment of cancer and eating in a metabolic way, and basically the ketogenic diet, which is becoming, it's a big craze right now for health and fitness and losing weight. Well, yeah, it does help you lose weight, but it also does a lot into your body. And cancer is at a cellular level. The reason why our cells divide incorrectly is because we've mistreated our body. And on a mitochondrial level, things start getting all messed up.
Okay, just for everybody who might be not as much into cellular biology as Dave is, the mitochondria is the energy center of every cell in your body.
Yes. Yeah, and it breaks down, right? Cancer cells break down sugar incorrectly. They ferment it and they cause acidic buildup in our body and everything, and they divide very rapidly. But if you take the sugar supply away from it, not all cancers thrive on sugar. There are a few rare ones that don't, that basically will grow no matter what you do to them. But they're very rare. But the majority of cancers all thrive on sugar. So if you remove the sugar from their diet and go into a ketogenic state where you're using ketones, the burning of fat, they can't survive. And I've done intermittent fasting. I've done long water fasts. That those two things have actually, I went 8 months for a period where I had no change in my lung tumor at all. And every scan came back, no change. And then shortly after that, I decided I was going to do a water fast. So I started with a 4-day fast. Then I was like, oh, it's hard to do. And, you're starting to break down fat. You're getting all sorts of toxins from the fat get released in your system. Your electrolytes go off. There's a bunch of things that happen, right? So if you're going to do something like that, definitely research the heck out of it, because if you just jump in and try it, you're going to be like, oh, why did I do this, right?
And think about joining a advocacy group. There's a bunch of fasting groups on Facebook that are awesome.
Tons, yes, tons. I mean, there's some really good people out there that are really doing some amazing things with this stuff. And so I did that, and I went on to do a 7-day, I think, after that, and then I did a couple of 4 or 3 days, and I went back for my scan 2 months later, and I had a relatively major change in my lung tumors, which, I went on this drug that I'm on now that I basically went in and told the doctors, this is the drug I want to be on. This is where you can get it. This is the person I talked to. Please get it for me. And a week later, I was on the drug. So if I didn't do all of that, I would have never been on that drug. And I should have been on that drug in the first place.
And when you say a major change, are you talking about a major decrease?
Major decrease and calcification of the tumor, of the mass.
Showing that.
Yeah. So this drug is really helping with my head because it's got a huge concentration in the brain. So I had over 25 small little tumors in my brain. And some of those were obviously pushing on spots, causing me to have trouble walking. And even Steph said, like, you see me, I talk a lot. But she said, for a year, you weren't talking to me. And I was like, really? I didn't think I was that bad. She goes, no, you sat around and watched television and movies all the time. And I was like, oh, yeah, I did. Like Christmas last year, I was watching Christmas movies, like 2-3 a day. I don't watch Christmas movies. I wasn't really a Christmas guy. I am now. Honestly, I am now. It's so funny because mindset, right? You're like, hey, friends, family, life, love, all that, it matters. So, you have to focus on what matters. Yeah. The only way that we're going to see change happen in the oncological world, in the medical world, is if people take a stand, speak up. So, if other people are doing the kinds of things I'm doing, like, I get people all the time. I'm like, I'm going on my 3rd year now, and people are like, you need to share your story with people. I'm like, it's like, I don't like talking about it. It was hard in the beginning. Now it's like getting easier. But it's like, if I don't share this with people, then people don't learn what I did. I spoke with a woman the other day, and she was like, you need to tell as many people as you can, because I have friends that are suffering from cancer too. And I'm going to go talk to them about this. This is amazing. What you've done is incredible. And I don't think it that way because I live it every day. But the reality is that the changes that I've made in my body, the fact that I'm still here 3 years later and I'm doing very well. My good friend Jay, the other day I was talking to him and I said, when I had cancer, and he looked at me, he said, you just said when you had cancer. I said, yeah, I don't feel like I have cancer anymore. And so that's a mindset too, because I'm going through every day, living it in the present moment, just being myself, having fun, enjoying life. I'm conscious that there's something else there. I know that I need to keep my health at a certain level in order to enjoy the rest of my life, to be here 40 years from now, which I intend to be, right? And I'm not looking I mean, everybody looks at life and they're like, oh, my grandfather died at 70. I'll probably live to be 60. You can live as long as you want. As long as you have the right mindset, the right practices in life and stuff like that, who knows how long you can live. Don't shorten your life up because you think that your grandfather died at whatever age, or don't think that I'm going to get cancer because this person had cancer. Are we genetically disposed to certain cancer? Sure. But we can mitigate that problem by eating healthy, by living healthy, by taking care of ourselves.
And we can exacerbate that problem by thinking thoughts just like you mentioned. I'm doomed to have cancer because everybody in my family had cancer. I would like to point out to the audience here just some really unique things about you that I think have assisted you in your success. One thing is, just like you, when you were talking to your friend Jay about your cancer and, you know, when you had cancer, what I noticed right away when you started telling me about your story is that you don't closely associate the cancer with you.
Yeah.
You were talking about earlier how important it was for you to see a picture and to know what you were dealing with.
Yeah.
But, you know, most people don't have the self-confidence to keep themselves separate from their disease when they see that picture.
Yeah, it's
I
hard.
call that a mental tattoo, because once you see that in your body, it's like, oh my goodness, like I am that.
Mm-hmm.
And in my experience of practicing medicine all these years, the cancer thrivers, and by that I mean the people who have had a journey with cancer
Yeah.
and have had amazing lives for the whole rest of their life, are the ones who are able to say, cancer is a disease that is walking with me, I'm living with, but it's not them. They're not cancer.
Yeah.
And that's so important to be able to build up your self-confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I also noticed that you've obviously forgiven yourself for the years that you didn't treat your body so well.
Yeah, I know exactly what I did wrong.
Yeah. And you're okay with that. You're like, okay, that's the past.
Yeah.
Today's a new day. I can make a choice right here in this minute to eat right. I can make a choice right here in this minute to move my body in a way that supports my muscles. All of those things are every minute choice.
Absolutely.
So no victim attitude here.
Yeah. No.
So
I know what I did. It's my fault.
So do you hear that? He's taking full responsibility for his entire existence.
Yep.
And that's what also gives him the courage to stand up and direct his medical care. I am a huge advocate of everyone becoming the chairman of the board
100%.
of their medical care team.
Yeah.
And you are a great example of how you actually do that and do it effectively. Now, what was the reaction when you told your doctor, hey, this is the drug, here's who to talk to, I'm going to be on this drug with or without you, is basically what you said. Not exactly, but kind of.
Well, the first doctor, the one that put me on crizotinib, the one he kept pushing for, unfortunately, I ended up moving into so I sold one of my houses. I moved in the basement apartment with my parents, and unknowingly they had mold in the basement. So I was getting better for the longest period. When I moved there, that's when things kind of went south really quickly. Mold for anybody is a very nasty little thing. Can do a lot of things to you on a cellular level.
Dave Asprey's Moldy documentary is a great way to familiarize yourself with what's possible as far as mold ruining your life if you're not familiar with that.
Definitely read up on it. It completely threw me in a bad place because that's when I ended up with tumors in my head and everything. So I had to refocus. We literally moved out of that basement apartment and I went and rented a brand new house because I knew there wouldn't be any mold. It was kind of a scary moment. And crizotinib that he was trying to put me on, why would I go on it if I was continually getting better with a whole food plant-based diet? It didn't make sense for me to expose my body to toxins. It was a chemotherapeutic drug. It does do things to your body. There was a lot of nasty side effects. Well, when it went to my head, I'm like, okay, doc, I need to go on the drug but he didn't tell me at the time that it didn't cross the blood-brain barrier, right? And I didn't do the research because I was a little bit overwhelmed at the time. Had I have been in my right mind at the time and not thinking kind of in a little bit of a panic mode, I probably would have went, doc, no, that's crizotinib, doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, give your head a shake, So him pushing me all the time and me getting better with my whole food plant-based diet and some nutraceuticals and stuff like that, I was like, absolutely not. Why would I put it in my body? And he's like, well, it will help. And I'm like, okay, how much? Well, you are getting a little better, but you seem to have the disease at a standstill. And I'm like, yeah, I said, do you think I really need it? He's like, well, I'm going to suggest it to you. It's my obligation as a doctor to suggest it to you. I said, well, it's my obligation as your patient to say, no, thank you. And he was kind of like giggled about it a little bit, but you could tell he was mad at me, right? And he's like, well, they made me put my list of nutraceuticals together. And here's my suggestion. If you're going to see a doctor and you got a list of nutraceuticals and they ask you what you're on, do your own research, figure out if some of those interact with the drug that you're going to be on, if you are going to go on a drug. But at the end of the day, don't tell them, because they're going to be like, well, I shouldn't say don't tell them, but I mean, I actually decided from there on in, I was not telling them any of the nutraceuticals I was on. In fact, my naturopath gives me some stuff I don't even know how to explain. They're like probiotics and stuff that she gives me that really help with getting rid of all the bad bacteria in my system, help keep my immune system at a higher level. So there's some high level stuff that you can do if you're working with the right people and implement them into your life. It's diet, lifestyle, it's nutraceuticals are a big part of my wellness, and working closely with a really good naturopath, and not just one that's out there for a buck. Somebody who really cares about you, who understands Chinese medicine and all the other avenues, nutraceuticals and naturopathic medicine. There are so many areas. It's like, it's a rabbit hole. I mean, you can go down it. But what you need to do, and it's like our next level business, you need to pick the top 3 things that are really going to help you get to where you want to be. And if you want to get well, there are some key things: nutraceuticals, diet, nutrition, exercise. Those are huge. And researching the heck out of stuff. Because if you're doing those 3 things, then you can go in confidently to your doctor, to your medical care practitioner, and say, listen, this is what I've learned. Let's bounce some ideas off here. When it comes to nutrition, you're not going to get any idea bouncing. You're just going to get the cold blank stare.
And what I've found is helpful in my family's care, because we're a big nutraceutical family. And what I found is, if I make the list of the medicines, we use an Excel spreadsheet for medicines. One of my family members is on 30 medicines and nutraceuticals.
Okay.
And is doing great at an advanced age. So really proud of that person and love them to death.
Yes.
And if we put down the name of the compound, the generic name, like turmeric, for example.
Yes.
And what it's for, how it helps. Like, does it help with wound healing? Does it help with blood flow?
Yes.
And put it in very simple terms.
Yep.
Then it at least lets us start the conversation with the doctor. And then sometimes the doctor will say, well, where'd that come from? You know, because since I'm a doctor, if I'm there, sometimes, you know, I get a little more cred. Not often, but sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'll say, well, hey, here's the data. If you'd like to read it, I'm happy to send you to the data.
I mean, just to go back to nutrition, like my mom, she was diabetic, had a stroke. Within 6 months, she was no longer any of her diabetic medication. She's feeling amazing. And now we're 4 years out with no stroke reoccurrence. I kind of have to be the adult in the equation sometimes, a reminder not to eat certain things. But at the end of the day, she's doing very well. And yeah, she struggles a little bit with her mental acuity and stuff like that. But it's tough.
So I think you may have already covered it, but I want to ask a question directly just in case. What is the one big mistake that you would not want anybody else who has a cancer diagnosis to make?
Don't just agree with everything the doctor says. Do your research before you agree to any procedure. The drug alectinib that I'm on right now, it works very, very well for my type of lung cancer. The results have been incredible. I'm looking at it from a standpoint of I can knock down the tumor masses, the load in my body, so that my body can easily fight the disease. So I'm trying to get my body back to a neutral position again, right? So that's why I look at it a metabolic disease, right? I'm using these medications to eliminate most of the bad guys so the good guys can kind of take over. And I'm working very diligently to establish a good cellular workings within my body, right?
So to give the good guys a fighting chance, the good cells in your body, your whole immune system, a fighting chance to do what they do best, what they were designed to do.
100%.
There's always more to explore at thinkandgrowwell.com. Go to thinkandgrowwell.com and join the community.
Epilogue. I interviewed Mr. David Donald Vogt on February 24, 2019. David passed on November 2, 2020, over 4.5 years after his initial diagnosis of stage 3 lung cancer. He had plenty of time to do all those things we don't want to die wishing we had done, like spending more time with his family and dogs, making sure his affairs were in order, encouraging others, and continuing to love life. This is only part of our interview. David had some great suggestions for doctors that I've published in an episode of the Doctor's Mentor Show. You can find our entire uncut interview inside the Think and Grow Well community if you want to hear it. Go to thinkandgrowwell.com to join us.
Your next steps.
And what is the one big thing you want everyone facing a health challenge to take away from your experience?
Go out there and take care of yourself. Like, seriously, just start for everybody, start taking care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself so that you can be better for other people, not just for yourself, but for everybody. Like, if you don't look after your body, if you don't take care of your own self, how can you become a better person? Like, if you're constantly struggling with health issues because you completely ignore that, you just go out and live life haphazardly with no care in the world, unfortunately, you're probably going to come into the same situation where I did. Like, I spent 15 years not looking after my body. I got overweight. I got out of shape. I started eating incorrectly. And then next thing out, it's literally huge. And stress is a big one. So eliminate stress, eat clean and healthy, exercise every day. I mean, we've all heard it, but just do it. And go out there and just be happy. If somebody's having a crap day, you go up to the Tim Hortons or to the coffee place and the person's in a bad mood, and just smile at them. Like, be that person in the room that lifts everybody else up. You don't do that. Like, it doesn't help you any to be like miserable and grumpy every day, because that's not going to get you anywhere in life, right?
And that may be what contributed to getting you in the situation you're in.
It's true. It's true. You have a choice in life. You have a choice to be miserable and unhappy, or you can choose to be happy. I don't think it's something, happiness isn't going to come up and grab you by the shoulder and say, come on with me. You have to go out there and create that happiness. So whether it's your business, your life, whatever, even for your family and your partner, like, encourage them to be better people every day. And I if anything, like, I know that my little ray of hope when I come into the oncology center actually perks up a few people's days for a few days on ends. And I've had people actually thank me because they're having a crap day. And I go in, I'm like, hey, how's it going? And sometimes I'll come into the front desk girl at the office. I was like, you look like you could use a hug. And I'll give her a hug. And hugs are amazing, right? So just go out there and be that person that does that. So, yeah.
So, if you're out there and you're already facing a health challenge, your action item and what you need to do right away is to take these tips to heart. Are you doing everything you possibly can to take care of your own mind, body, spirit, and awareness? Are you assembling a medical care team that you direct your care, not someone else that you think you can trust? And are you doing the research to help yourself survive and thrive? And if you're out there and you're a medical professional, or if you're out there and you're someone who hasn't faced a health challenge like this, your additional action items are to start thinking about the own team you'd like to take care of you, because we're all going to face some health challenge before the end of the day.
Yeah.
And let's really think about communication. Let's think about how little it costs to find out what really matters to people and to give them that little gift of love, hope, and a hug.
Yep.
Love you so much for sharing this message. You're amazing. I really, really thank you for this.
Thank you.
Carefully read all labels and heed all directions and cautions that accompany the products. Before using any strategies, activities, or products referenced on this podcast, consult with your legal, accounting, or healthcare provider. Think and Grow Well was created and is hosted by Dr. Lori Lee Barr. It is owned by Make 3 Wishes, LLC, executive producer Dr. Stephen Dent, audio-video engineer Richard Dent. The company, Dr. Lori Lee Barr, and producers disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about the qualifications or credibility of guests. Opinions of Dr. Lori Barr are her own, opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements from products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services mentioned. Remember, one idea is all it takes to change your world.
Psst, be aware. Vitality is an inside job. Trust your spirit, make up your mind, and get your body in gear. There are no second chances.